Have you ever noticed people who almost never post on social media? Maybe they're your friend. Maybe they're you. They don't share personal photos. They don't update their status. They don't show up on TikTok or Facebook, even though these platforms have billions of users every day. What do we usually think about them? Are they lonely? Do they have an uninteresting life? Are they missing out on something important? But what if that way of seeing things isn't quite right? As social media increasingly encourages people to document every moment and turn it into content, as posting gradually becomes an almost mandatory habit, is choosing silence really a sign of lock? Or is it a conscious choice, a way to protect personal space in a constant stream of information? A way of living without needing to be constantly seen in order to feel real. Maybe people who don't post haven't disappeared at all. They're just living at a different rhythm, quieter, but also clearer and more genuine. So, what really happens when someone decides not to post? Are they lacking connection or simply avoiding an invisible pressure? Think about it for a moment. Every time you open TikTok or Facebook, you're not just consuming content, you're stepping into a space where every moment can be compared, every image can be judged, and every silence risks being misunderstood. The human brain is naturally sensitive to the gaze of others. When you know a post could be seen by hundreds, even thousands of people, the mind quietly shifts from living to performing. You start to filter, to edit, to weigh whether this moment is beautiful enough, interesting enough, worthy enough to be shared. And right there, some people stop. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they realize that not every experience needs to become content. But where does that pressure really come from? Why can a single post button make so many people hesitate? The issue isn't sharing itself. It's the feeling of being seen by too many people at once. When you post a moment on Facebook or TikTok, you're not just talking to friends. You're standing in front of an invisible audience, maybe a few dozen people, maybe hundreds, or even more. Our brains were never designed to handle being observed like that continuously. So they become alert. They start questioning. Will I be misunderstood? Will someone judge me? Will someone compare? For some people, that feeling is small enough to ignore, but for others, it's strong enough to make them step back, not to escape, but to keep their lived experience intact. When being observed becomes a constant state, the experience of living begins to change in very subtle ways. You're no longer just enjoying the moment. You start thinking about capturing it, taking photos, recording videos, and wondering whether this moment is worth posting on Facebook or TikTok. Even before the moment ends, a part of your mind has already left. It's busy considering camera angles, possible reactions, and other people's emotions. Psychological research shows that when people shift from living to performing, their level of true presence in the moment decreases. And that's why some people feel tired of social media, not because they dislike connection, but because they realize that constantly documenting their lives is quietly taking away their ability to fully feel their own experiences. And it's right here that a major misunderstanding often appears. People who don't post are often seen as indifferent, closed off, or unwilling to connect. But is that really accurate? Or are they simply connecting in a different way? Instead of sharing their emotions with an invisible crowd, they choose direct conversations. They choose listening. They choose being fully present in real-life encounters. Many studies show that deep connection doesn't come from the number of likes or comments, but from interactions that have depth and two-way emotional exchange. For these people, keeping experiences to themselves isn't about hiding. It's a way of protecting the meaning of the moment. Not everything important needs to be proven, and not every connection needs to be seen. In reality, there is a group of people appearing more and more often on social media. They still watch, they still follow, but they almost never post. In psychology, this group is often referred to as silent observers. They haven't disappeared, they've simply stepped out of the spotlight. Research suggests that not posting is often linked to a higher sense of autonomy. They don't need constant feedback to validate their self-worth. They don't need likes to know they're living the right way. When they no longer have to think about how others might react, the mind becomes more relaxed. Emotions become more stable. For them, social media is a space for observation, not a stage for performance. And sometimes it's precisely by not joining the shared performance that they're able to preserve inner clarity. This leads to an interesting paradox. Social media was created to connect people, yet the deeper many people get into it, the more distant they feel from themselves. When every moment has the potential to become content, life slowly starts being measured by response. How many likes, how many comments, how many people saw it? Over time, the brain learns to tie self-worth to external attention, and when that attention doesn't come, a sense of emptiness begins to appear. For those who choose not to post, they often recognize this game early, not because they are better than others, but because they are more sensitive to emotional wear and tear. They understand one thing clearly. If your value depends on being seen, then peace will always remain just out of reach. That's why not posting gradually becomes a boundary. Not a boundary to separate oneself from the world, but a boundary to protect mental energy. When you no longer have to constantly think about what others might think, the mind gains space to turn inward. You become more aware of your own emotions. You notice what drains you, what restores you. Instead of living by the rhythm of algorithms, these people live by the rhythm of their nervous system. They pause when they need to pause. They stay still when they need to stay still. Not because they're afraid of being seen, but because they understand one thing. Not all presence needs to be public. Sometimes that quiet is how the mind protects itself in a world that is always demanding a voice. When you look deeper, you begin to see something important. People who don't post aren't turning away from life. They're turning away from turning life into a performance. Instead of asking what they should post today, they ask how they are truly feeling. Instead of waiting for feedback from the outside, they listen to signals from within. This creates a different kind of self-awareness, quieter, less comparison-driven, but more sustainable. Psychology describes this as a shift from external values to internal values. When the feeling of being enough no longer depends on how many people are looking at you, but on whether you are living in tune with your own rhythm, a deeper sense of stability begins to form. In the end, the most important thing to remember is this. Not posting on social media says nothing negative about who you are. It doesn't mean you're lonely. It doesn't mean you lack connection. And it certainly doesn't mean you're falling behind. It simply shows that your brain, your emotions, and the way you restore your energy are organized around a different rhythm. A slower rhythm, a quieter one, but no less deep. Life isn't measured by how often you're seen, but by the feeling you carry with you when a day comes to an end. If not posting helps you feel clearer, calmer, and more honest with yourself, then that is a choice worth respecting. And if these words make you feel understood, take a moment to reflect on how you're using your attention and your energy.